Hey guys, it's William Jamming. So last time we used the layer mask and motion blur to make this line look a little bit menacing, right? So let's try to add a little bit of variation of the just one layer of motion blur, and I'm going to share with you guys a technique called a multiple layer. This is just the name I give myself. So yeah, bear with me. So let's add more layer and add a different layer of blur so it looks much more interesting and much more centered. I'd say the lion's face. Okay, so let's try that. So before we done anything, we need to duplicate it, and this is image. This is the lion, and let's just blur it. Okay, so in order to blur the lion, let's duplicate that, and let's add a selection. So select subject, and we'll select the line, and we can click at our first layer, and because we already add that, so if I hide everything else, just as the carved out version of the line, we can make this line as clear as possible, and then we blur the background, so we can add the blur and motion because we like to make the line like it's moving, right? Motion blur, choose the angle, and adding a crazy distance, so 160, something like that, maybe even more. Well, that's just too much. 160 is fine, I think. Okay, and then the line is actually moving, and because we have already add this first layer, right? And if we don't add just a line background, but we have covered out this line, so yeah, this line still exists and this does not blurred. So I'm going to duplicate it in order to maneuver and add layer upon this layer. So I'm going to click and hold and make a new layer, right? And I'm going to blur his I'll say his body. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to, if you just hide everything, I think is pretty good practice. If you don't know what you are doing, is duplicate the first layer and then add more selection or something like that, right? So yeah, once you choose this, and you can blur parts of here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to change the mask. Okay, is to change the mask, and to blur the underline and change the up mask. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to, I think I'm going to use the lasso tool, and for example, if I want to keep the body moving, I'm going to use the lasso tool and the pen, and I'm going to, yeah, just single out the body, and it's minus here, and you can using shift, holding shift, it just become plus. So holding shift plus it, okay, and yeah, and if you just using the original default setting is the minus, and holding shift is a plus, so you can plus it a little bit, and minus, okay, and of course you can holding shift and plus the main part of this body. I think maybe just include the leg as well, okay, and maybe this part as well, maybe leg as well. Okay, once you've done it, once you've done everything, what I'm going to do is to change that to gradient G, and using paint bucket, essentially just using the black to boom, right? So essentially, if you are look at like this, you just mask everything out, okay? And of course, you can use your brush, right? To do a little bit more fine tuning. You can use soft brush, nothing too hard, just soft brush, okay? And Command D first, and then you can use soft brush, maybe adding a little bit of opacity, again the edges, right? So nothing too hard. Right, so you're adding a layer of it, and you can click and everything will show, right? But that's not what we want, because I'm going to blur this layer as well. Okay, so blur this layer, you have to choose this layer and adding a filter and blur, and I'm going to add that a maybe motion blur, just change that to 100, move it down a little bit, right? So nothing too crazy, right? And yeah, here we are. So even though the grass is moving crazy, the body is moving not so crazy. The like body is getting down a little bit, okay? And let's get all this hair, another layer. So once you got that, you can just duplicate this layer as well. So click and hold, get a one more layer, right? And once you got this layer, and you can change this part as well, okay? So you can use soft brush using the black to just make it a little smaller, maybe the head. Yeah, maybe something like that. Okay, so you kind of just use the mask, and like every time you you duplicate it and use the mask, you mask the part that you don't want to you don't want to show it clearly out, and in that way you can use an underlying blur to blur this. It's kind of a fine-tuning blur. Okay, so once you've done that, you can go to the underlying layer, which is the layer here. Okay, and you can blur it, you can add a filter. Okay, click filter, and you can blur, and I'm going to use motion blur using the same angle, but just yeah, decrease that to 50. Okay, so yeah, this is look pretty interesting, right? So everything is blurred, but the air and yeah, it's not blurred. So I don't think we need to leave the air out. So I'm going to just remove the air as well. So maybe here this is more natural looking. Okay, so let's see that. Okay, so the face is pretty clear. So what I'm going to do is to say focus on the nose, and so what I'm going to do, click here and duplicate it, and hide. If you're having a hard time analyzing or get around this the layer mask, you can just hide everything, and then you know exactly what you're working on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to make say the eye standing out, right? Make the eye standing out, and everything else will blur it. So let me just show you just two layer, and click this layer and adding a filter and adding a motion blur, right? And once you add that, you can add say I don't know, maybe a 45, something like that. Okay, so only the eye got not blurred, right? So if you add it, well, this looks pretty interesting. So everything is moving so fast, but the eye is pretty clear, and clearly the eye is not moving. Like you are focused on the eye. This will give the viewer a clear feeling that they should focus on the eye, and the line is looking at the viewer, and the viewer is looking at the tiger, and the focus point clearly is like the image do give you more information than just showing it, but they give you the like they give you information, tells you that you should look at them in the eye, and this convey that's menacing and is moving pretty fast, and you will look eye to eye with this crazy lion. So I think it's good practice for you guys to add multiple layer. Okay, so adding multiple layer, this is a whole picture, and this is a lion, this is a lion's body removed, and all the hair removed, and all the face removed, or leaving only the eye. So this is called multiple layer, and you can you can not only just add blur filter to it, you can add any filter, you can do any kind of maneuver, even change the color as well to make your the whole composition a little bit interesting, rather than just use the original one, which is this plain old image. Okay, so you can use the kind of post-processing technique to make it look much more interesting.